Um, I see you, Christina. I don't know if I see Brian yet.
Yeah, Brian's on.
Okay, great. Perfect. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and then we'll do some introductions. There we go. In the, there we go. Okay. And then Tracy, if you can keep an eye on any of those that show up as the that needs admitted, if you want to admit them as well, because I always try to set these up so that we don't have to do that, but apparently I didn't do that correctly. So again, for everybody that's here, again, we're talking about the Public Purpose Charge Schools Program, also referred to as the SB 1149 funds, and the Energy Trust kind of coordinated program, or kind of the coordination between the two agencies. And we'll get started with introductions. I'm Christy Spoon with the Oregon Department of Energy. I'm the schools program lead here. Again, I've emailed and communicated or talked with, or most of you, so you probably recognize my name. But Tracy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself if you can unmute?
Yes, I'm Tracy Richardson, also with the Oregon Department of Energy, and I work in the schools program also, and very closely with the districts. Several of you may not have seen me before, so it's nice to meet you here. And I work mostly with the energy reporting. So Christina?
Hi, I'm Christina Skellinger, and I'm with the Energy Trust of Oregon. And I predominantly work with K through 12 schools in all of the areas of Oregon except for Eastern Oregon and Southern Oregon. Colin, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm driving, but I'm Colin Podelnik. I work with the schools in, like Christina said, Northeast and Southern Oregon.
Great. Brian?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Morrison. I'm a lighting specialist, the Energy Trust program, and I work specifically with K through 12 public schools across the entire state. So if you're working on a lighting upgrade, I'm your contact, and please reach out.
Perfect. So just one other thing I kind of forgot to mention. For most of you, if you can mute yourself just so we don't have any background noise. Again, I typically ask people to turn off cameras too, just to help with bandwidth, but whatever works should be fine. And then we'll get going to the next slide, maybe. Hold on. Okay, Christina.
Yes, so this is a territory map for the Energy Trust of Oregon. You can see that Energy Trust serves folks that are within PGE, Pacific Power, Northwest Natural, Cascade Natural Gas, and Avista territory. So if you've got at least one of those utilities in your district, then we can offer incentives to you. Go ahead.
Okay, so again, for those of you that have joined these presentations, this webinar, this will be very familiar. The slides are very similar to the same ones that we've done before, but it's just, again, all about repetition. And then there's some staff that, there's a bit of turnover in school districts. So we like to go through these again. So some key elements between the two programs, the Public Purpose Charge Program, or Senate Bill 1149. We like to kind of mention both names because this it's been referred to as both the Public Purpose Charge and Senate Bill 1149 funds. So it's the same program. Again, kind of looking at that utility territory map that Christina was talking about. Again, for the 1149 program, we're looking at school districts that are within the PGE and Pacific Power territory. So again, it's just those two territories on the electric side for this program. The school districts that are considered eligible currently are receiving a monthly allotment of those Senate Bill 1149 funds each month. It goes directly to your district, and it will continue to go to your district until the end of the program, which is January 1, 2036. Again, those funds that are going to you directly are based on just your eligibility, the facilities that are in that territory, and the student counts. Again, and that's going to be your educational facilities, your elementary school, middle school, high schools in that, in the PGE and Pacific Power Territory. Eligible projects or expenditures through the program, through the Public Purpose Charge Program, is going to be energy audits or fleet audits. And then the energy efficiency measures that are recommended from those studies or audits. Zero emissions vehicles, which can include your electric school buses. And electric vehicle chargers. And we do have a couple more slides about some of these to talk a little bit more about them. So we'll come to that here in a little bit. And energy measures through our program, again, they have to be analyzed. There needs to be some sort of calculation of the energy savings. And for the energy measures to be eligible, they need to have energy savings, some sort of BTU savings between whatever fuel savings there are. Or electric savings. Christina.
And on the Energy Trust of Oregon side, we talked about the different utilities that we reside in. All facility types are eligible. So whether it's a school or an admin building or a transportation building, we can help to serve any of those buildings. There are different types of incentives. The standard lighting and custom, they have different processes and different incentives. We'll review that in a little while. And let's see, you can go ahead, Christy, to the next slide.
So Senate Bill 1149 funds. Again, you guys will hear us refer to the maximum reimbursement amount. And that is going to be based on the measure life of that piece of equipment multiplied by the annual energy cost savings. So that's the maximum amount that our program can approve for reimbursement for the Senate Bill 1149 funds. And again, another kind of point is that the program and these funds are considered a reimbursement after the project's completed. So again, the district kind of has to pay for that project, move through all the paperwork and the steps, the coordination, and then once Odo has received those final costs, the documentation, we review it, enter it, and then we send an email that approves the district to then reimburse themselves from those Senate Bill 1149 funds. So a couple other things that I'd like to point out is that, again, we can approve Senate Bill 1149 funds based on the dollar amount that we estimate the district has in their account now, plus the funds that we think the district is going to receive by the end of the program. So again, it's kind of it's a rough estimate because, again, the revenues have been increasing and changing, it seems like every few months. But again, we just estimate those dollars so that we can kind of allocate those future dollars. And again, that's going to be until January 1, 2036. The other thing that I like to point out is that sometimes there's a reference, or we've referred to school districts as being spent out of Senate Bill 1149 funds. When we say that, we're referring to only a few districts that have actually spent the funds that they have in their account now, and they've allocated, like they've done projects already and been approved to reimburse those future funds that they're projected to get until the end of the program. So again, it's when we say spent out, we're talking about all the funds all the way to the end of the program. So again, there's only a few districts in that scenario out of the 111 that are eligible. So, and then as the districts receive those funds directly, again, it's based on the district, or it's the district's responsibility to track those funds. So you receive them, you track them, and then as you get approvals from Odo for reimbursement, then you can reimburse what you have in the account. Or again, if you've only got some portion, which we'll talk a little bit more, then you track the remaining portions as you're reimbursing those. And I will show you a spreadsheet here soon, or at the end of towards the end, that can help you with some of that, with that information. And one thing we like to note is that for school districts, as you're doing these you pay for the projects ahead, and then we give approval for you to reimburse. In some cases, districts need to move that back to whatever account that paid for the project. We just always typically recommend to either move it back to that, or if you can keep it in some sort of bond or maintenance or facility fund, that way it kind of keeps moving projects, moving them forward. That kind of helps, but it's not a requirement. It's just a recommendation. And then the last thing for our program, again, is that we have some annual reporting. Again, typically you'll hear from me or Tracy with those annual reporting requirements. We are asking for electric bills, each year for the eligibility. And we also ask for utility data. That is a full years of utility data for each of the eligible facilities. And again, we ask for the school districts to report their kind of account balance through the end of a fiscal year. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about why that's helpful. So, Christina.
So our incentives are paid as it's just a check that comes in the mail, and it's based on energy savings. And so we will similarly be calculating energy savings based on projects. I will say that this year is a particularly good year to look at projects because, as we've all noticed, our utility bills are increasing, and it means that our calculation for cost effectiveness, which is like we take a look at the project and we take a look at the energy savings and then the cost of the energy savings. So as the cost increases, it increases the likelihood of earning an incentive and then receiving a larger incentive. So I have some projects that, maybe last year, the year before would not have received an incentive. And in this year, they probably will receive an incentive. So it's a good year to be looking at projects.
Yes.
Christy.
Okay, so I like to include this slide as a reference for some of you, if there's any transportation folks in the webinar. The 1149 funds, as I mentioned, an eligible expense can be for zero emissions vehicles that include your school buses, the electric school buses, and the electric vehicle chargers. So this gives you a little bit of information on kind of the up to or maximum amounts that we can approve for the type of zero emissions vehicles or chargers. Again, part of this, the dollar amounts are the up to, because again, it's based on, we need to know if there's any other grant funding or any other funds involved. And also it depends on your district, because again, every district, the amount of funds that you get is based on how many facilities and the student counts within those facilities. So again, while we could approve up to 300,000 for the larger C or D type electric bus, if your district is a smaller district, you may not even have that amount to the end of the program for us to approve. So again, these are just kind of as a reference, but if you're looking at any of these, either looking at doing a fleet audit, which is just a spreadsheet on our website, or if you're looking at purchasing one of these vehicles or chargers, please reach out to me. We've got the link to the website on here. And the forms and the process. Again, all of this for the zero emissions vehicles and chargers, you just work directly with Odo. We'll talk a little bit about the process for energy measures here in a little bit, but again, for these measures, just please reach out to Odo. Okay, Christina.
Yes, so in 2025, there are not a lot of changes from 2024 actually, but would like to highlight some of the ones last year that a lot of folks took advantage of. I'll call out first steam traps and pipe insulation. Steam traps is $400 or $500 per steam trap, and pipe insulation is $25 per linear foot. My experience has been that either of those incentives can cover close to or at 100% of the project cost. So if you're a district that doesn't have a lot of money to spend money on projects, but you're in need of these types of projects, it's possible to get that 100% paid for by Energy Trust. The districts that have pursued this, they'll send me a proposal from their contractor. I'll review it, make sure that it's eligible, it meets all the wickets, and then I'll send back, hey, here's what your estimated incentive would be. So if you're interested in any of that, let me know. Roof insulation. This is one of the largest checks that I am able to give. So it's $2.85 per square foot. If you have existing roof insulation that's water damaged, or maybe it's below R5, it's really, really very little existing insulation, or any water damage at all, which seems to be a recurring theme. We can give you $2.85 per square foot. So I have given hundreds of thousands of dollars for roof insulation projects. It's a good one. We've got water insulation, boilers and water heaters. Those are easy incentives to get. That said, boilers and hot water heaters in particular, I would send anything you're thinking of doing, send a spec sheet over to me so I can make sure that you're installing the right thing. There are many commercial boilers and water heaters that meet our requirements, but there are some that don't. And I've unfortunately had a few customers go through the process and then install their boiler, install their water heater, and then come back and see that it wasn't eligible. And it's a little heartbreaking because these incentives can be pretty high. So if you are thinking of doing a project, please reach out and I can always double check. Hey, yep, this qualifies, and here's what your incentive will be. You'll have a good idea of all of that before you even start. Controls, HVAC, we can cover up to 90% of the project costs. This year, I'll have my largest incentive ever given for one project to a site. It is a controls upgrade, and I think it's something like $600,000. Not everyone will get that, but I wanted to pique everyone's interest. The controls is a really good one. HVAC is another one. So if that's something that's, you're thinking of doing in the next year or two, you're looking at controls work, please feel free to reach out. That requires a little bit of an energy study. So we procure and we pay for that energy study, and to do a little calculation to see what the savings would be and therefore what the incentives would look like. Retro commissioning, if you have existing controls, but maybe they're not, the controls aren't talking to the HVAC, they're not working quite right. Retro commissioning is a wonderful option. Anybody who's done retro commissioning, and I would say this across the board, anyone who's done retro commissioning on their buildings through our program has been very happy with the process and the incentive. I don't know that I've seen a retro commissioning incentive that was less than that 90%. So they're really good incentives. Lighting, Brian will talk about in a little bit. There's also pool covers, kitchen equipment, and greenhouses. So those are the ones that I've seen a lot of folks take advantage of, and they're usually pretty good dollars going out the door. Go ahead, Christy.
Okay, Brian.
All right, thank you. As everyone may know, there are big changes coming to lighting in 2025, some that you may know and some that you may not, and we're going to talk a little bit about those. Really, I can't stress enough that now is the time to upgrade your lighting and to take advantage of our current incentive dollars before they're impacted later this year. Next slide, please. So I'm sure everyone here is aware of House Bill 2531, but let's talk about the current impacts. As of January 1 of this year, linear pin-based and linear fluorescents have been banned for sale in Oregon, which impacts about 90% or more of your lighting in your facilities. So as a result, you are going to be required to convert to LED as your lamps and fixtures go out in your facilities. So instead of waiting until these lights do fail on you and you're between a rock and a hard place, let's start now and help you complete those upgrades with incentive dollars from our program. Next slide. Thank you. So I just want to briefly recap what's occurred over the last year with our program and some important dates for 2025 and changes that are coming. Last year, due to the high demand, our standard program offerings stopped accepting projects in August. Before we stopped accepting those projects, we gave a 2-week window for customers and trade allies to submit projects. And as a result, we almost doubled our project volume in those 2 weeks with K through 12 public schools. And I've been working nonstop since. And as I mentioned in the last webinar, you might notice bags under my eyes and that I look about 10 years older than I did last year at this webinar. And that's just because I'm working hard to help districts complete these upgrades. As a result of that project volume, before the program paused, we had allocated all of 2024's budget and a significant portion of 2025's budget. When the program opened this year on January 16th, approximately 90% of the school's budget for our standard offer was already allocated. So with that, you might be thinking, is it worth it to try and participate or not? And I think it's a resounding yes, because there's 2 ways to participate in our program. and each offer has its own budget. And we'll talk a little bit more about those in a minute here. And also, the budgets are constantly fluctuating. You know, we make adjustments to projects that reduce the incentives. Projects get dropped because they don't end up moving forward. So really, you got to stay in touch with us so that we can give you the latest updates on what's going on, and also just put you in that queue. So if funding is available, we can get your project approved. Additionally, SB 11, there's always SB 1149 funds for schools, and we're here to help you, guide you through that process. Make sure you work with whatever program has the funding or can maximize the benefits based on your project needs. So continue to work with us. The last date on there that I want to make sure you guys write down is June 30th, 2025. And the reason that this is an important day is this will be the last day you can submit projects under our current offerings and incentives. And to give you a little context behind that is after after the House Bill 2531 was passed, Energy Trust worked with the Public Utility Commission to get a 6-month extension on our current offering before they're impacted by this legislation. So January 1, those go into effect. June 30th is the last day to submit projects. And then July 1st, we will have a new program offering and incentives. We're currently evaluating what those incentives look like in the program after June 30th, and we hope to have some updates for you later this year. However, it is likely that the program will be able to incentivize less products and that incentives may be reduced. For example, we may not be able to incentivize basic lamp retrofits or one-for-one replacements that many districts are currently doing. And you'll likely have to go above and beyond so that we can record energy savings as LED will become the standard. So what that looks like is possibly new fixtures, redesign of your spaces, including advanced controls like luminaire level lighting controls where you have integrated photocells and occupancy sensors, networked fixtures, and integration with your building management system. So write down June 30th on your calendar and make sure that you get as many projects as possible submitted before that date to take advantage of our current incentives. Next slide. Thank you. So just kind of to recap on the recommendations I've made is that evaluate your lighting now. Hopefully you guys have already started on that, knowing that this ban was coming. Submit your projects as soon as possible to secure funding. Submit as many projects as possible before that June 30th date. And then last, of course, is just don't forget to partner with us. We're here to help you through this process and guide you and assist you to ensure that we maximize the funding for your project. And then last, of course, is keep in mind that SB 1149 will continue through 2036. You can continue to receive funding for lighting upgrades through this offer. And even after Energy Trust incentives are exhausted, I will still be one of your contacts to assist you with your projects and to evaluate savings. And then we'll share that with Christy and the SB 1149 team to provide SB 1149 funding estimates. Thank you. So let's quickly just take a quick look at our 2 offers and the existing buildings lighting program. We have a standard offer, which I've really been focusing on today because they really maximize your incentives, as well as we have an instant incentive offer that's really great and simple to use. And we'll talk about that next. As I've mentioned, our standard offer has a limited budget for this year, so we really encourage you to submit your projects as soon as you can. Our lighting tool is our application, and pre-approval is required before you purchase or install equipment with this program, as well as that we require you to provide pre and post conditions. Our trade ally partners can help you complete that application on your behalf, or you can work directly with me to complete it. An important date to know about this program is that all projects have to be completed by December 1st of this year, and invoices submitted to the program for approval. The reason for this is that because of that extension we were given, we need to close out these projects before the end of the year. So we will be holding a hard deadline for that December 1st, but gives you through the summer to complete lighting upgrades in your facilities and a couple additional months. Some of the key highlights of this offer is that, as I mentioned, is this program offers higher incentives than our instant incentives program. And that's because we calculate savings versus average and estimate savings, as well as this program is going to be best suited for larger projects or remodels of your facilities.
Brian, we had a question from Joe in the chat. It says, Brian, our contractor is dragging their feet with our projects. Is that typical?
It depends on who you're working with. I would also say that one thing I do expect right now in the market is bottlenecks with contractors. They're being really asked to do a lot. There's a lot of work to be done out there. So be patient with that. You can contact me and let me know if it's one of our partners. I can poke them. I can help them. I can, whatever we can do to support them. As well as, I think it's always important to have multiple options, multiple vendors you're working with so that when challenges occur, you can shift if necessary. But get in touch with me and I'm happy to see if I can help in any way.
Thank you, Brian. I think that's all we have in chat right now.
Thank you. All right. So our second offer is our instant incentive offer. Really great offer, as I said, very simple to use. It's offered through participating distributors, and your incentives are offered at the point of purchase. So an example of what that looks like is you buy a $10 lamp with a $6 rebate. You pay just $4 and you're out the door and running. An important note about this program is in compared to the standard program that you have closer to a year, not quite that now because we have that December 1st deadline, but you have a more extended period of time to complete installs, where this program you have 90 days to complete your install. So it's critical that you don't purchase more than you can complete in that 90-day period. And in the past, we have had some issues with people overestimating the work that they can get done. Most of us have other jobs to do besides retrofitting your building. And so they get behind and don't get this done. And if that does occur, it may come to a point where the program asks you to refund the products or the incentives, to return those products or refund the incentives. So keep that in mind. And this program is really suited for small maintenance, daily upgrades and replacements. If you have a couple of lamps you need to replace, a couple of fixtures, you can run down to your distributor, grab this, and replace those fixtures quickly. I really encourage districts to make sure that they're using this program whenever they can. Whenever they're purchasing eligible lighting equipment, you should be receiving an incentive through this if you're purchasing through these distributors, which is most of the distributors in the state. If you need to know who's available, who's on that list, you can find it on our website, or I can send you some information if you reach out.
Brian, we do have one more in chat.
Yep.
David asked, is there incentives towards labor or is it just materials?
Yeah, that's a great question. The incentives are really just a set rate based on energy savings. We do need to include labor and material costs because that's part of the calculation, and your incentive can be limited if because you get paid 50% within our standard offer. You get paid 50% of your total cost, up to 50%. So that's why we include that. But where it really benefits you then is when we stack SB 1149 on top of that, is that we can pay anywhere from 50% to 100% of your lighting upgrades. So it really varies based on the combination of labor and materials you have, but we can cover a significant portion of it, and it can include labor. An interesting note too is that we can also document district labor and include that in your estimated cost as well. So that's quite a benefit, as those are typically labor that's already paid for, but when we're assigning it to a project, there can be possible reimbursement for that as well.
And Brian, just one thought on that. The labor costs that are included typically from the school districts would be on the downstream process, correct? The standard?
Yeah, yes. And I think Christy might touch on that too, but The downstream process is really simplified in the part of helping you with the SB 1149 funds, because I will work with you from beginning to end. We share that information with Department of Energy. They reach out and let you know. With the midstream program, you only are getting credit for materials. And if you want to provide labor and other costs and stuff, you need to work with Christy. Or you can even let me know. I'm happy to be the middleman and filter and share information to help simplify it for you. So yes, there is a slight difference in the two programs. And another one of the benefits of our standard offer is that we kind of include everything in a package. We help you through that entire process from beginning to end.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. That's all we have in chat right now.
Perfect. All right, so last is, I'm just going to ask you guys again to stay tuned. I know it's hard because we're constantly having updates, but there's a lot of moving parts right now, and we're working hard to keep up. So stay tuned for additional details about what the program will look like after June 30th. And as I mentioned, we hope to have those for you later this year. We'll be at OFSMA this year, as we are most years, and we'll be doing a presentation in a booth. So come by and talk to us about updates and how we can help you. And then that last one is just that reminder again that we are here to help. Let us know what you're working on, how we can be assistance, and lean on us, because it's a lot of skill, knowledge, and experience on this team, and we would love to assist you with your projects.
We have one more question in chat. Patrick has asked, does Energy Trust help districts select the appropriate lighting to substitute for the old one?
That's a good question, and I have to give a little bit of my political response here is that we cannot recommend specific products, but what I like to do is provide education so that you can make the best decision based on your needs. So, right, so that looks like is talking about proper light levels, how that light will impact that space, benefits of different technologies, and downfalls of different technologies. I've been doing lighting for 15 years now, and I love an opportunity to share my knowledge and experience with you that goes way beyond energy efficiency, as lights affect our health and well-being as well. So if you have questions about products and things like that, let me know. I don't make specific recommendations, but I do empower you with information so that you can make the best decision.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian.
So was there any other questions from anybody that wants to unmute and ask Brian any questions about lighting specifically? I mean, we've got a few more slides, but about lighting specifically? Okay. We'll go on to the next slide, and then again, we're all going to be on here, so you guys can chime in the chat if you have additional questions for Brian.
We do
Christina?
have one.
Oh, okay.
It just popped up. I'm sorry. Are motion sensors and dimmers required?
They're not required. They may be in the near future here, as we talked about going above and beyond. But they're definitely recommended. Motion sensors, especially now we're moving to luminaire level lighting controls where you have sensors embedded in each fixture, are really reliable. They're ensuring that lights aren't on in those spaces when it's not occupied. And then dimmers is an exceptional thing I think all classrooms should have, because just thinking about when we're outside, the light varies up and down throughout the day. And you also in your classroom are going to have a lot of different needs. So having a dimmer in those spaces really creates comfort and benefits everyone in those spaces. And I've seen nothing but happy customers when those types of things are included in your projects.
Thank you, Brian. Christy?
Christina, I think you're up for this one.
Yes. So we were going to go through some of our incentive processes. Nothing that you need to really pay attention to a whole lot, or you don't have to memorize it. We try to make it easy and simple for you. So knowing that there are two different programs you might want to get funding for, we have streamlined the program so that as long as you're working with myself and Colin and Brian on the Energy Trust side, all of our paperwork are sent over to Odo on your behalf for you. So don't feel like you have to try to work through 2 different programs. As long as you are installing things that are eligible for Energy Trust incentives, they can be eligible for both programs. So for these standard incentives, this standard incentive is something where you can install the thing and then we can apply for the incentive on the back end. That said, I always recommend proactively sending me what you're going to install so I can double check, 1, that it's eligible, and 2, what your incentive would look like. That is, those incentives include insulation, any of the insulation projects, steam traps, water heaters, and boilers. Again, I get a lot of folks maybe that don't install the right thickness of insulation or the right efficiency of a boiler and miss out on incentives. So, but you don't have to apply until after the thing is installed. So let's say you reach out to me, you say, hey, does this boiler qualify? I said, yep, absolutely, go forward. You install the boiler, then you send me the invoice, and then I will help you complete the application. When the application is completed, you submit, you'll get your check from Energy Trust, and then that application is sent to Odo. And then Odo will send you their letter that says, here's how much you get approved for. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy process. You just have to be in conversation with us just to make sure that you're installing the right piece of equipment.
Yeah. One thing, again, we've had a few districts that have reached out on this process and asked for an estimate of those incentives between Energy Trust incentive and 1149. Again, it's just an estimate, but we can do that for you if you request that. So again, just mention that to Christina or Colin, in this process, if you're looking for an estimate from both programs, and we can do that.
Our custom process, this is a process for any of those larger projects like controls, HVAC, or retro commissioning, or pool boilers, any type of pool work that you do. Those tend to have good energy savings. So in these cases, Energy Trust procures and pays for a study. That study works for both the Energy Trust program and the SB 1149 program. So again, as long as you're talking to me, we will get a study going that works for both programs. So once we start the study, our engineers will do a little energy calculation to determine what the energy savings are. And through that, we can determine what our incentive will be. And then Odo will determine what the SB 1149 funding would look like. And then we'll come back to the customer. So all that's sort of happening in the background. On your side, you sign a piece of paper, fill out the application. We then take it from there and then come back to you with what's called a funding summary. And that funding summary will say, hey, you're doing a controls project. Here's the estimated cost. Here's what you can get from Energy Trust. And here's how much you're going to get in SB 1149. So it's a nice sort of simple table so that you know exactly what you're going to get from every program. And then at the end of the project, you finish your controls project, you send me the invoice. I share all of that with Odo again. So you'll receive a check from Energy Trust and then, an email from Christy that says you've been approved for a certain amount. And then our lighting process, Brian went through this. I would say lighting we're in a real transition year with lighting, with limited budgets. And so I would just, in terms of our process, reach out to Brian. And as Brian mentioned, if you are working on lighting and the Energy Trust incentives run out, of course, he is still available to help you with receiving SB 1149 dollars. So we can still help you with the paperwork, so you can at least get SB 1149. So we can go ahead and skip the lighting since Brian did a good job giving the overview there.
Just one note on this instant discount that kind of was brought up again was just that on the instant discount process or that midstream process, again, if you have labor costs, those are not necessarily included upfront in the paperwork. So again, if you have labor costs that you want to submit to Odo for SB 1149 funds, you need to reach out to Odo. Reach out to me and let me know, send me any invoices and costs related to those labor costs, and then I will review that project. on this project or on these instant discount lighting projects, I don't always just review the projects for 1149 funds because the incentive covers a huge part of the materials cost. So again, you have to reach out to me if you want me to review it and include labor costs. It's just, I don't do it automatically. So, okay. So these are a couple examples of some funding, again, like what Christina was referring to, what you might see in some of the documentation, which I'll show you a few of those other kind of what they look like a little bit. But again, the first one is an example of a controls project. Again, these are estimated numbers. These are not necessarily real numbers, just for you to see an example. This particular controls project estimated cost was $250,000. After we reviewed the project and the measure savings, the SB 1149 maximum reimbursement amount was determined to be $150,000. The estimated incentive from Energy Trust was $50,000. And then again, we would approve up to the max from Senate Bill 1149 funds. So the district would be receiving $200,000 between both SB 1149 funds and Energy Trust incentive. So your out of pocket would be $50,000. And then on this other example for lighting upgrade, again, the estimated cost is lower than the Senate Bill 1149 max reimbursement. So $75,000 for the estimated cost. The max reimbursement, again, was assessed at $150,000 based on the savings. The Energy Trust incentive for this one was $25,000. And then again, we would essentially, if we were using the, again, estimated cost, Senate Bill 1149 funds would be $50,000. So you're fully funded between the two funds. But part of the reason why we like to show this is in this scenario, let's say when the project's finalized, if the cost came in a little higher than what was estimated, then again, submit those final costs because we can sometimes make up a little bit more on the Senate Bill 1149 funds because we can approve up to the maximum amount. Of course, not to exceed the full cost, but that's kind of why we provide this, to make sure that you know what the maximum amount is so that we can go up if we need to, that little bit of wiggle room at the end. So there we go. Couple things, just a couple screenshots. Again, I know it's hard to read them because they're super small, but I just wanted to show you again what Christina mentioned. This first document is the funding summary. You'll get something similar to this that again provides the name of the school district, the measure. It includes the estimated cost, Senate Bill 1149 funds, all those dollars that we were just talking about, so that you know when that report is done, you'll be getting this document from either Christina or Colin that tells you what all of those dollars are ahead of time before you move forward with that project. Again, there is one other thing on here, the commissioning required. So again, for some projects, if they're like controls projects or HVAC over a set dollar threshold, the Senate Bill 1149 program requires that needs to be commissioned. And we have a list of commissioning firms. And the cost of commissioning can be eligible from a Senate Bill 1149 funds as long as you hire one of those qualified firms. But again, we just provide that in that document. This notice of measure eligibility is similar, but yet slightly different. This is more for those lighting projects and some for those boiler projects or those standard application projects that you might submit. This is once Odo has received that paperwork, we'll review the project and the measures. We're entering those projects in the school's database as being an eligible measure. So this typically would come, again, for like lighting, once we've received that first set of paperwork from Energy Trust on the lighting tool. We enter it and then we provide you the estimated cost information. Again, the bottom part of this is the funding summary. So it's the same information that you might see on this other document, but it provides that to you before you move forward with the project. Again, for boiler projects or those standard applications, those kind of come to Odo at the end. Again, so you may not get this ahead of time because we don't get that paperwork until the project's already done. So sometimes we kind of add that, but again, we're adding all the final costs and things like that at the end based on what Energy Trust forwards to us once the project's done. But the next thing here, I wanted to put in a screenshot of the Senate Bill 1149, kind of once we send approval. So once the projects have been installed and completed, you've submitted all the final costs to Energy Trust, and or they send it all to Odo. So there's a little bit of a delay because they've got to process it and go through it. Then they send it all to Odo. Once we receive it, we'll review it. We enter the final costs in the database, and then we send the school district an email similar to this that tells you, again, we've reviewed it, entered it, and the district's now eligible to reimburse this amount. Again, we give you the full amount that you're approved to reimburse, but one thing kind of, again, to note is if your district has that full amount sitting in the account, that Senate Bill 1149 funds account at the district, you can reimburse the full amount or transfer that full amount. But if you don't have that full amount, let's say you only had 20,000 in your account, you could transfer the 20,000, and then it's up to the district how you transfer the remaining portion of that up to that 50,000. You can do it once a month when you get those monthly revenues. Some districts do once a year at the end of the fiscal year, and they just transfer the amount. The main thing is that the district tracks that reimbursement so that you only reimburse this approved amount. That's kind of the key thing to note. And especially when you're doing a lot of projects with a big dollar amount and approval, you really want to keep track of that. This is just a screenshot of a spreadsheet, again, just to reiterate those tracking of reimbursements. Again, I have these spreadsheets that I have built. I call them the balance of funds spreadsheets. I built, created them for each one of the districts. It's a way for me to track kind of the revenues that the districts receive with the approved expenditures and what the estimated account balance might be based on a set time. Again, this is me assuming like I plug in this dollar amount for the full approved amount of a project or a number of projects. And then of course, on the spreadsheet, it shows a negative. So I know that the district in this scenario is still owed the $631,000. And essentially, as the revenues are received, that just kind of ticks down until eventually that's at zero. I do understand that districts can't carry a negative balance. So again, something like this, you can use this if you'd like. I can send you copies of these for your district, or you can use something else. The main thing is that you have something that can track that kind of full project approval over time, because again, some of these might take a few years or longer to pay back. So you need something to track what you were approved for and how much you've paid, so that again, you can kind of at any time look at that and know we're still owed about this much. And again, school districts Tracy and I typically will ask that annual kind of fiscal year accounting balance from school districts. So if you are in a situation like this where you actually have done so much that you're in a reimbursement mode, again, we just ask that you respond to the email saying that you have zero in the count because you're reimbursing those old projects. And if you have the amount that you're still owed, you can send us that just so that we can kind of compare. It helps us look at what I'm estimating versus what you're estimating so that we can kind of make sure, because there is a lot of turnover at school districts and just to track those dollars and make sure. So I'm happy to send these to anybody that would like them for your district, or set up a meeting to discuss these specific 1149 funds and the tracking for your district. Okay, Christina.
So we ask every district to provide us with an email that there's some small print here. It basically allows us to share data on your behalf, share all your project information so that it can be a seamless process for you. So we have this for most of our districts. I believe Tracy sent out an update to those where we needed an update. And I think we're in the tens that are left to receive. So if you're one of those people, please do respond, because this is how we can share project information on your behalf. Tracy, do you have anything else to say about that?
No, I will be sending yours to anybody that I do not have a response from yet. You're right. We're almost down to the single digits. The majority of the school districts have cooperated. So really, the important thing is, in order for us to work hand in hand, that we do get this consent email from you. So if you get an email from me, just go ahead and cut that out, paste it, send it back to me. Real simple process. Thank you.
Great. But I think the take home is, we've given a lot of information today. I think the big deal is just reach out to one of us. We are emailing each other daily on behalf of customers and discussing your project. So as long as you reach out to us, we try to make it simple to you, even though it's a little bit on the back end, more of a complicated process. But again, if you just reach out to us, we can help.
Yeah, so I included a couple of the kind of dates, and actually I missed that one. So today we're in the second webinar. We will be posting a recording of the webinar, whichever is the better of the two between today and yesterday, on our website, and I'll send all of the registration, those of you that have attended or signed up, a link to that so that you have it. And then both Energy Trust and Odo, I believe, have a booth, and we'll be doing a presentation at OSPMA in April. And at OASBO, I believe that we'll both have a booth. So I just wanted to provide those dates in case you guys are looking at any conferences. Come stop by and say hi. Most of the time we're all there. I might not be, well, I'm pretty much not going to be at the OASBO conference because I will be in Maui. Sorry. But feel free to reach out if you need to set up a meeting or talk to anybody. But Tracy will be there, Christina or Colin or Brian. I'm sure somebody else will be at the Energy Trust booth. So
yeah.
And then our contact information. So I'll leave this slide up for just a little bit, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute or send them in chat.
We do have
And
one
let us
in
know.
chat right now that says, can we have the PowerPoint too?
Yes, I will make sure to have a PDF of the PowerPoint that we'll send in the email. So yes.
All we have in chat.
Actually provide one additional comment. I realized when we asked about motion sensors, there's a portion that's is related to code. So you need to work with your contractor related to code about motion sensors. Energy Trust does not enforce that for our incentives, but it is a requirement that you have to meet code. And I just had to remember that because I don't enforce code, but important to note that you follow code where necessary with those sensors.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? I think some of these questions that I'm seeing are the ones that we discussed in the lighting portion. But yeah, Christine and I are on here for a little bit longer. Tracy's on here, maybe Brian. So if you have any questions, feel free to, again, unmute or just thank you so much for attending. And please reach out to any of us if you have any questions or we can help you, again, look at projects or Senate Bill 1149 funds, whatever it may be, just reach out to one of us. And thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.